Welcome back to another live and amplified indie fusion podcast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another basic podcast. Today, we have a very special guest joining us. We have Caitlin Mae. How's it going today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw you were promoting your new single that dropped yesterday, and I was just like, we have to do this again. I mean, it hasn't been that long since we've had you on the podcast because we met at CMA Fest or yeah, CMA
Yeah,
Fest, but you had a new single coming out, and it's like, you know what, let's do this. So,
I'm excited, and this is kind of one of the things that makes the country music community feel like home is you may catch up with people that you've met, whether it's radio,
mhm.
podcasts, and only a couple months or a couple weeks prior, but
Right.
when you have a new song coming out, you get to share that with them and you're all part of that same journey. And I just really love that. There's a closeness.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I do kind of want to jump right into the song because I was listening to it since it dropped yesterday. I had a nice little 20-minute ride home, so I put it on repeat a couple different times. And this song feels different. What was kind of your thought process going into it? I'll let you kind of explain the song, and then I'll kind of talk about why I felt different.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm excited to find out why it sounds and feels different to you because it feels so different to me for so many reasons. But of course, being the one who moved so far away from home and just kind of packed her bags and went by herself and moved away from home for the first time
Mhm.
ever, and that first time being to a different country and then working with all different kinds of people, new musicians. There was really nothing the same as what it used to be. Everything was new, everything was fresh, everything felt like a first. And I actually got to co-produce this song.
Nice.
And that's another first for me. And I've loved it. I think I've always had a voice of somewhat in the studio, but you can find yourself working with people occasionally who have been in the game longer than you, and so they think their voice deserves to be louder than yours. And
Hmm.
that's the one that should be heard. And since you've hired them to produce, it just sometimes goes that way. And it can be disappointing, but for the longest time, I didn't know why it felt like that
Hmm.
until being able to co-produce. And I realized this is why it felt like that because I wasn't wearing a producer hat and I guess I didn't have that voice at that time, and it's been brilliant to kind of see this in a new light and be involved in it in a new way because not only did I write the song and it was a solo write and it was based on a true story, although
Hmm.
delved into a little bit of fiction, every single moment in this journey has been true to life, and so to
Hmm.
co-produce it has been life changing. And all the musicians, everything was live, and that was really cool too, a whole new experience, and it's just kind of opened doors to a whole new world.
For sure, for sure. So for me, when I was listening to Mr. Moving On, it felt rougher, and I mean that in the best way possible. Like it felt edgier in a lot of ways. Like it just there was something in the instrumentation. It felt rockier. Where like I love all the music you've been releasing for the last year and a half, starting with like Little Black Dress. Yeah, or would that have been about 2 years now? I my brain
Yeah,
is
about
yeah
2 years,
yeah
2020.
yeah. So for about the last 2 years, starting with Little Black Dress, kind of moving forward, everything just felt really polished and clean and, still you, but just very polished and clean. Where Mr. Moving On just feels grown up, a little rougher around the edges, and just grittier in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I definitely felt like this song needed that grit and
Hmm.
needed that edge because the story wouldn't have been told quite right if it
Hmm.
didn't have that. That was an element that I would have missed massively if it wasn't there. And I remember kind of explaining what I wanted to the musicians the day we tracked it, and
Yeah.
first take they had like what I was looking for, and I'd played the song for them, explained what I was looking for, and it was just almost like that could have been the song. It could have gone out right then. I loved everything about it, and they did a couple passes, but really they just did what they'd already done. And then we added banjo, we
Yeah.
overdubbed that, and it was just such an incredible experience. And I'm excited for what's to come because based on what I know now and the voice that I feel like I have now, I just can't wait for the future. And I think everybody's goal is for every song to be like their best. So the next song is going to be even better, and the song after that is going to be better again. You always want to push yourself and really only ever want to be in competition or in league with yourself. I
Hmm.
think that's the most important because it's really about self-improvement, and that's what this song feels like. And it's the first Nashville release. So I'm just over the moon that I can say I'm this proud of it.
Nice. I was going to ask, is this like the first song fully written and produced in Nashville?
Yes, so not the first one written because I've
Hmm.
written lots of songs, I mean, since traveling, but
Hmm.
even so since moving to Nashville. But this will be the first one that has been fully tracked, vocals done, mixed, mastered, polished, everything in Nashville. This will be the
Nice.
first.
Nice. And how do you feel about it? Like obviously it it's been a long journey over the last year or so since you first moved to the States to start going to school, pursue music, like all these different things that you're trying to accomplish. How does it feel to kind of have that first 100% Nashville song out?
It feels incredible. And I think just the fact that we've moved on to a point where everything recorded was live musicians, and
Mm.
there's this atmosphere when you're in the room and it's electric. There's so much energy and it's just coursing through everyone and everything in the room. And almost it kind of is the closest thing to replicating the emotions you feel when you write the song, because that is a very proud moment in time. It almost feels like the world freezes and it's just you and the creation of this song in that moment. And maybe it feels even more so like that because it wasn't a co-write, so it was just me in that room. And I often write songs late at night when I should be sleeping and probably everybody else is, just sitting on my bed with a guitar, and it feels very vulnerable and very raw and authentic and just real to what you were feeling in the moment. But then to be in the studio and for those same feelings to come back up makes you realize that everything is right. You know, there's nothing that is leading you away from the authenticity of the song and where it was born, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, what's kind of the next phase? Do you feel like this is an authentic representation of who you see yourself being as a musician for a bit, or at least for now?
I definitely do. And I've always kind of felt a pull towards country rock, just having that
Mhm.
little bit of grit and edge in my music. But I also think you have to do the song justice, and sometimes the song doesn't call for that edge.
Hmm.
So it is kind of a fine line between wanting to be true to your sound, but also wanting to be true to the song and making sure that the story you tell is the right one. It's so much more than just the lyrics, even though I am very fond of the lyrics. That's lyrical content is one of my favorite things.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it kind of is a toss up between those two things, and you don't want to lose either element. They're both so important. So I think there are songs to come that will probably have a little less grit, but that doesn't mean it's not still simmering there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to kind of back up what you're saying, it's like it comes on a song by song basis, but that doesn't mean it's steering away from the type of music you want to make. It's just the song doesn't call for it to be that edgy or whatever it
Yeah.
is. So,
Yeah. I'm actually really excited because yesterday, which was release day, it was a crazy day, but that's the best way.
right?
I ended up going back into the studio to record another song that's going to be coming out really soon.
Nice.
And that was kind of what got me thinking because it is a little less edgy. Um, but it's also a song that I really believe in and still tells a story that speaks to me. And it's just cool how those two things can be true at once. You can feel all those things that you felt when you wrote this song and you can relate to it still. And then you can write this other one that is in an entirely different vein, but both are still true to your life in the present. It's not that you can only feel one or the other. It's
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So with this new song already essentially queued up, what's kind of the plan? Obviously, we're a little over 24 hours after the release, which is mind-boggling to think. But what's kind of the plans looking forward to the rest of the year? I know we got the holidays and all that fun stuff coming up. So,
So this next song that I just recorded, although I probably shouldn't be talking about it when I'm talking about Mr. Moving On,
right.
um, but that is likely to come out either end of November
Mhm.
or beginning of December. So I'm excited for that, but then there is so much in the pipeline for, spring and beyond of 2025. So it's crazy to think that that time will be here before we know it.
Mhm.
And all this planning ahead is not really planning ahead because it's going to be on us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially right now because it's like in 5 days you got Halloween, and then a month later you got Thanksgiving, a month later you got Christmas, and it's all going to go by so quickly. So like if you're not already ready for
Mhm.
February, March, it's going to be it'll be interesting. So,
Yeah. I really think that that is what happened when it came to there being, in my opinion, such a large gap between my last release and this
mm,
one because I kept thinking, okay, today will be a good day to sit down and plan all of this out. And
mhm,
then that never really came. It just there was always something and I've been lucky enough to be on the road a lot. So I've been out of state a lot in
mhm.
between being home in Nashville. And it's just crazy to think that when I got here in January, and had my visa and was ready for this whole new chapter. I could never have imagined how fast those months would go and we'd be in
Mhm.
October already.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's crazy. And you brought up the gap in between releases, but I also equate that to the fact that because you released your EP last year and
Mhm.
then you moved to the States and then just trying to get acclimated to that entire process and
Yeah.
figuring everything out. It's just kind of like I think a lot of people are understanding in that regard. So,
I hope so because I loved there was a time where I was releasing songs very
mm,
frequently and I
mhm,
loved that. And I feel like I got away from that a little bit, but there was so much going on, and it still felt like I was creating so much content. It was just a little less in the studio and a little less produced. And I was still having so much fun just with everything that I got to do. And so many of those things were firsts, being in Nashville and getting to experience life here and everything that comes along with it for the first time.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. And you'd mentioned that you've been on the road quite frequently. I have noticed you've been down to Florida quite a bit, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
Did you did you go to Disney World, right? Was it? Yeah.
I went to Disney and I went to Universal, and those were
Mhm.
all massive parts of my childhood. Um, but for me, it's any if somebody asks me to play a show, there only has to be one show, and I'll go. I'll go
Yeah.
to Florida. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'll
Fair
just
enough.
go. I'll figure it
Fair.
out. And I love being there. It really does remind me of that little girl who knew she wanted to move to America. That was before I even knew Nashville existed. I mean,
Hmm.
my first time in the States, I was 2 years old, and my parents had bought a vacation home in Florida, and that was kind of our Christmas tradition. We would go to Florida for Christmas. My mum's birthday's on Christmas Day, so it
Oh
was
well.
lots of celebrating, and we got to do it together as a nuclear family, and it was just, it still is some of my favorite memories. So
Right.
going back just feels like reminiscing. And
Right.
I walk through the parks because I do love to go to the parks even now. And I think there are things that have changed, but so
Mm-hmm.
much of it is what I remember when I was a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost unbelievable that I'm standing in those same spots and I'm not holding both my parents' hands.
Yeah.
It's so different.
Right.
It's just, yeah, but I think everyone goes through that when they move out for the first time, whether it is to college or whether it is to a new country or whether it's down the street. These are these things you have to get used to, and
Hmm.
it's, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the magic of Disney World and even Disneyland or any of the Disney parks is those icons aren't going to change. Like, yeah, the different areas and rides, they'll change
Mhm.
because it's a business, they got to keep people wanting to come
Yeah.
back. But the core memories of walking down Main Street of the Magic Kingdom, that's not going to change. Like,
Mm.
that's always going to be a very
Yeah.
similar experience every time you go. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I remember having my Disney autograph book.
yep.
And my brother too, and we'd go around and we get autographs from Spider-Man. Like, oh well, actually that was Universal, but we would do all just have all these autographs from all the princesses, and I still have those books with all my
Nice.
autographs in them. I should bring it to the States next time I go back to the
Right.
UK and go get all those signatures again.
Right, right. So I actually worked at Disney World for when I was in college.
Oh,
I was an intern there, and so like I worked at Hollywood Studios, and I had a mission of getting a photo. Like when I was there, you're there, you go to the parks every day, and so you have to find not that it's not fun every time you go, but you have to find different things to kind of do
yeah.
to make it a little bit more entertaining. And so my thing was I was going to try and get photos with every character, and there was like
Yes.
certain characters that are only out at certain times or once in a while, and so it's like, okay, we're gonna go. I didn't come anywhere near close getting them all, but it was fun. So,
That is so fun, and I just love that it brings people together and it gives groups of people, some of which may not have come together,
mhm.
these things to do together. And it is a sense of community. And I use that word a lot, but in so many different aspects, whether it is in the music world or whether it is going and enjoying a day at Disney and
Mhm.
enjoying that day with people you love. It's just incredible and it is magical.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, kind of looking forward, what's your show situation? Are you kind of just actively playing right now, or because we're coming up close on the holidays, are you kind of pulling back a little bit?
So I'm going to be. I originally was supposed to have a release day celebration or a
Hmm.
release party in Florida, um, and that would have been yesterday. But it ended up not quite working out that way. And I think a lot of people have a lot on their plates right
Hmm.
now, and I wanted to be respectful of that. So I stayed in Nashville for the release day
Yeah.
celebration, and everybody came to a place called McNamara's Irish Pub, which was incredible. And I loved getting to see all my dreamers. Um, but from there, I'm in the studio one more time before I head to Florida. I'll be in Florida for a week and then I'll fly out of Florida to the UK for my UK leg of the Mr. Moving On tour. There will be a couple more release parties in the UK.
Hmm.
I'm going to be in London, in Yorkshire, in a place called Newport in
Hmm.
Wales, and some other venues and locations that have not been confirmed yet.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to share all of that with everybody over there and to document the whole journey. It feels funny to be
Hmm.
going back to the UK for a tour and not the other way around.
Right.
It's weird that I get to call Nashville home, but it's true that I pinch myself every day, that I keep waking up here.
Hmm.
I'm shocked that it's not a dream. Every day I wake up, it's still real.
Yeah. Hey, that's good though. Like the fact that you wake up and you haven't lost that that passion for, like making music and just the sheer awe that you're in Nashville. Like I think that's what's going to make this entire experience that much more beneficial. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I just love that everybody is so warm here and welcoming, and they welcome you with open arms. And even I think about last year before I'd officially moved, but I was visiting
Mm-hmm.
and I was here for Thanksgiving and didn't really think about how I would celebrate it because we don't celebrate it in the UK. But
Mm-hmm.
then being in a new place and everybody else is celebrating with their families, and
Yeah.
you also want to celebrate when you love a place so much that you wanted to move 4,000 miles away from
Yeah.
home to be there. And I want to be here for everything, the full experience, everything that people who were born here experience, and all those things that they feel and celebrate. And I had so many invites from people
Mm.
who genuinely wanted me to spend Thanksgiving with them, and it makes you feel so much less alone during those times that you should be with your family, and you
Yeah.
realize that there are people here who are family away from home and away from family
Yeah.
back wherever you're from. And yeah, it's a feeling of belonging, I think.
Yeah. I actually, it's kind of interesting that you brought up the Thanksgiving thing because as you were saying that, I recalled back. I was flying home a couple years ago to be with my family for Thanksgiving, and there was two young British college students that were sitting behind me on the airplane, and they were talking about how they were headed to their friend's place to celebrate Thanksgiving because they'd never celebrated it before. And
Oh.
they were a little worried about the customs and traditions, and they were trying to figure out what some of the food items were. And it had me not laughing, but it was just like, oh, that's very interesting. Like I think they were trying to figure out like what dressing was or something like that. And it was
Yeah.
just, yeah. And I was
I
just like, hmm.
I I want to say, I could be wrong, but I want to say that was my first time trying grits.
Okay. Yep.
And just somebody saying, did you want grits? And me saying, did I want what? What what is it?
To be fair, grits is a very much an acquired taste. Unless you're from the South, it's very much an acquired taste. So,
And then I've since come to learn that there is such a thing as shrimp and grits.
yep,
And that's a whole other ball game.
yep, there is. It is. It really is. So, that's great. So obviously you've got a busy rest of the year coming up. What have you been getting into outside of music? Like when you get 2 minutes to yourself?
That is, I would not know.
Fair.
No, so I think anytime I may have downtime,
Hmm.
even if I think, okay, I'm going to read a book or I'm going to watch a movie, I end up writing a song. So it typically is music, and then during my break, it's more music.
Hmm.
And but it's just lucky that it doesn't feel like work. It feels like everything I've always wanted to do,
Hmm.
and now I get to do it, and it just feels like a privilege and a blessing. Um, there are things I suppose I do not so much during breaks, but when we're traveling and I'm on the road or I'm in a hotel after a show, I will read. It's been a while since I was able to just get through a book. I always end up stopping and then not reading it for months and thinking, I don't
Hmm.
remember what happened. I have to start again. But I did just read a book that I really loved, and I read it in 2 days, the whole thing. And I'm glad because otherwise I probably never would have finished it.
Right.
And it was great. But I think there will be lots of memories and downtime and things outside of music when I go back to the UK. I know it is a tour, but I'll be with my parents that whole
Mhm.
time. And we definitely have some plans. And we're actually going to have Christmas in November because they won't make it to Nashville in time
Mhm.
for Christmas, but they're going to come afterwards, like Boxing Day, so like the
Yeah.
26th, and stay probably through New Year. Um, but we're going to have our official Christmas in November in the UK. I made my mum promise we'll put the tree up, we'll decorate, and all the Christmas chocolates that we're not allowed to eat until Christmas, we're eating
Mhm.
them in November. So I've
Nice.
already made all those promises before I booked my flights.
Well, because if I do recall, you're afraid of flying, correct?
Yes, yes, I
So
am.
it's kind of a big deal, the fact that you're flying back over by yourself.
It is a big deal, and actually, I'm lucky because this time for the tour, my manager is coming with me.
Mm.
So even though it's not the same as when you have your mum and your dad either
Mm.
side of you and you're holding on to their arms and you're squeezing them and they have little pinch marks from how scared you are.
Yeah.
Um, but it is nice not to feel entirely alone when you're afraid of flying and you're so far away from the ground.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
it's and I think it is something I have to work towards overcoming,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering if it'll be more something that I just manage rather than
Mhm.
overcome, because overcoming it seems like a really big task.
Right.
But
Right.
I did, somebody told me this a couple weeks ago and it did change my perspective. I haven't been on a plane since I was told this
Yeah.
though. But he said being, because I mentioned being so far away from the ground and that's terrifying. And he said, but you'll never be so close to God when you're still alive. That is like the closest you'll be
Mhm.
is at that moment. So just like think about how close you are to God. So I thought that was really beautiful.
Nice. That's cool. That's really cool. Hopefully it'll help calm some nerves
Hope
and,
so.
yeah.
I watched another video that talked about how being in a plane is basically like being surrounded by jello. Like if you put something like an item in jello and you shook it around, it
Yeah.
would be like the feeling of turbulence, but it doesn't move in the jello, it
Mhm.
stays. And that's
Mhm.
the pressure of like when you're in a plane. So I
Mm.
but that didn't really help because I found that out like 2 years ago and I've
Yeah.
flown many times since then. And it doesn't matter how much I think about jello, I don't feel any better.
Right. It's a like I get what they're trying to say, but it doesn't help in any kind of way.
No. Like having that fear and being in the moment and having to sit with it because you can't walk away from that situation and calm down. You're in that situation until you land. And it's just a matter of dealing with the panic because I mean that panic rising up in you and reaching like these heights
Mhm.
is not helpful. Like
Mhm.
it doesn't help you. It probably doesn't help anyone else around you. Um, but yeah, I just try to think like remain calm, take some breaths. It's okay.
Mhm.
And my mum always says, look at the air hostesses because if they are calm, then you're probably okay.
Yeah.
If they're
That
not calm, you should probably freak out. You know?
but even then freaking out isn't really gonna help. It's just
No,
gonna, yeah.
true.
Yeah.
True.
But no, that is actually very valid advice. Pay attention to the air hostesses.
Yeah.
If they're chill, you're probably okay. So,
Yeah, and it's so scary though. I mean, I've tried to do that for so many years,
mhm.
but maybe one day, I'll get on a plane and I won't feel any of that internal panic.
Fair. Very fair. So I need you to tell your mother hello because it was such a pleasure getting to meet her and your dad as well. He was there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting to meet both of your parents, which was really cool. I've actually, funnily enough, I've met more musicians' parents this year than I had like the previous 7 years of doing live and amplified. It's very, very interesting. So,
That's funny. And I love that so many artists, especially young artists who are like maybe not new to the scene because some people know what they want to do from a
mhm.
really young age, but just that they're still young and you have to have that support. And I mean, I still feel like that now. Have their parents. I think that's
Yeah,
really, really cool and beautiful that they travel together and they go to the shows together. And that's what my parents and I have always done. And I've never had to ask. They've just always been there, no matter
nice.
what. And that's another thing that's been new to navigate being in the States and them missing shows for the first time ever, or not being there when I go to interviews, whether that's in person or just, you
Yeah,
know, remote from the studio, but they were just always there. And now I have to call them and tell them about all those things.
yeah.
So there's a lot of phone calls.
Fair, very fair, very fair. But I don't want to keep you here too much longer. I appreciate wearing the Texas shirt. I picked up on that one. I was
Yes,
just like,
I know. I was just talking to my mum about that right before the phone call too,
mhm.
before the Zoom.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was like, wait a minute. And I was trying to figure out if Texas was playing in like Nashville or something, and then I realized no, I don't think so. So yeah.
No,
But
no, I know, and that's funny. That you said it because I just said that to my mum on the phone.
yeah, nice. That's cool. So if anybody wants to check out your music, social media, all that fun stuff, where's the best place to find you?
You can find me across all social media platforms at Caitlin Mae Music. It's Caitlin and then Mae MAE, and all music platforms at Caitlin Mae. And my website is caitlinmay.com.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute blast. You're
Thank,
welcome back on anytime.
thank you so much for having me. I always have the best time.
Yeah. And hopefully we can link up again at CMA Fest or one of the several industry fests that happen out in Nashville. So
Absolutely. I can't wait.
awesome. But once again, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch y'all later.